Historic vote. Humboldt approves Eel River Dam's removal plan. Water diversion agreement breakdown. A groundbreaking decision has just been made that could reshape the future of water management in Northern California. The Humboldt County Board of Supervisors has unanimously greenlit a pivotal water diversion plan that clears the path for the removal of two historic dams on the Eel River. But here's where it gets controversial. While many hail this as an ecological victory, questions linger about the fate of water rights and local community impacts. Let's dive into what this means and why it might not be the simple win many imagine. After nearly 10 years of painstaking negotiations and collaboration among federal, state, tribal and local agencies, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors approved a water diversion agreement today that supports Pacific Gas Electric's PG&E initiative to decommission the Potter Valley project. This project includes dismantling Scott Dam and Cape Horn Dam, located on the upper reaches of the Eel River. This is a monumental step in what has been a complex and often contentious effort to balance the competing water needs of the Eel River Basin and the Russian River Basin. The so-called two-basin solution aims to address long-standing disputes over who controls the water diverted from the Eel River into the Russian River. These basins serve different communities with diverging interests, especially when it comes to water allocation for agriculture, municipal use, and ecological preservation. Humboldt County's Public Works Deputy Director Hank Seaman captured the spirit of the negotiations well, describing the process as one defined by compromise and mutual respect, rather than a win-lose scenario. This agreement represents a shared effort to recognize the needs of all parties involved and sets a strong foundation for cooperative management moving forward, he explained during today's meeting. For those unfamiliar with the background, here's an overview. The Potter Valley project, operated by PG&E, is over a century old and functions as a hydropower scheme that diverts water from the Eel River watershed into the Russian River headwaters. This diverted water supports farming and urban areas in Mendocino, Sonoma, and northern Marin counties. PG&E has been signaling interest in abandoning this project since at least 2018, with the powerhouse ceasing electricity production in 2021. The license to operate this project expired in April 2022. Shortly thereafter, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, instructed PG&E to submit a plan to relinquish its license and dismantle the project, paving the way for the removal of the dams. In 2023, key stakeholders, including Sonoma Water, the Mendocino Inland Water and Power Commission, the Round Valley Indian Tribes, California Trout, Trout Unlimited, and the California Department of Fish Wildlife, began working on a new water diversion plan. This collaboration produced a proposal to build a new diversion facility called the new Eel Russian Facility, NERF, which would be overseen by a newly formed Eel-Russian Project Authority, ERPA. Earlier this year, Humboldt's Board of Supervisors gave preliminary approval via a Memorandum of Understanding with these groups. At today's meeting, Seaman detailed that the newly approved 30-year agreement establishes co-equal goals, aiming both to restore native fish populations, including Chinook salmon, coho salmon, steelhead, and Pacific lamprey, and to maintain a reliable water supply for the Russian River Basin. Seasonal diversion limits will be tied to natural river flows and fish migration patterns, with most water diverted during the wetter winter and spring months to minimize ecological disruption. Seaman also acknowledged Humboldt County's preference for keeping Eel River water within its own basin, but emphasized that the county only accepted this agreement because it offers strong protections for the river. From our staff's perspective, we believe this plan safeguards the Eel River while allowing for cooperative water management, he noted. A key financial element of the plan involves transferring PG&E's water rights to the Round Valley Indian Tribes. The tribes would then lease these rights to ERPA for $750,000 annually, covering roughly 21% of NERF's anticipated operating costs. This lease payment could rise if public funds cover more than 3/4 of construction expenses. Supporters of the agreement see it as a pragmatic way forward. Brian Johnson, Senior Policy Advisor with Trout Unlimited's Pacific region, acknowledged that while many in his organization prefer to see the diversion eliminated entirely, they back the current deal. Allowing the diversion to simply vanish isn't necessarily the best path, he argued. Unregulated water disputes could delay dam removal or worsen conditions for the Eel River. This agreement helps avoid that scenario by ensuring protections are in place. Alicia Hammond, Executive Director of Friends of the Eel River, expressed enthusiastic support as well. Her organization was created to advocate for freeing the Eel River from dams, aiming to restore its natural flow and ecosystem. She stressed the urgency of timely dam removal to maximize ecological recovery. This agreement represents a critical shift toward managing flows in a way that respects the Eel River's capacity, diverting only water that it can afford to lose during the wet season, Hammond explained. While not fully ending the diversion, the technical flow schedule developed provides vital habitat protections and appropriate seasonal limits. Among the Board of Supervisors, opinions reflected careful balancing acts. 4th District Supervisor Natalie Arroyo called the agreement wise and reasonable, highlighting its potential to move efforts forward, despite her personal preference for keeping all water in the Eel Basin. 3rd District Supervisor Mike Wilson praised county attorneys for their diligent negotiation work and emphasized the importance of ongoing restoration efforts beyond just the main river channel, recognizing the larger ecosystem benefits. Board Chair Michelle Bushnell echoed support, framing this as the best achievable outcome at this time, and both 5th District Supervisor Steve Madrone and 1st District Supervisor Rex Bone agreed, suggesting the community should embrace this compromise. Let's accept this and make the best of it, Bone said. After a thorough discussion, Bushnell moved to approve the agreement, seconded by Wilson, securing a unanimous 5-0 vote. The process, however, is not yet complete. Other parties involved still need to officially approve the plan. PG&E must also submit its final license surrender and decommissioning blueprint to FERC by July 29th. As this proposal undergoes review, PG&E will conduct further studies to understand the environmental impacts and develop mitigation strategies for dam removal, which is still anticipated to occur several years from now. Update: as of Wednesday, all signatories except PG&E have finalized their approvals. PG&E has yet to agree to the terms. This entire process provokes challenging questions. Is this agreement the best balance between ecological restoration and community water needs? Or is it a compromise that sacrifices too much of the Eel River's natural flow? Could a more aggressive push to eliminate all diversions accelerate dam removal? Or would that risk political and legal backlash, delaying restoration indefinitely? What role should indigenous water rights play in this new era of river management? We invite readers to share your thoughts. Do you agree that this is the best possible path forward, or do you believe there are better alternatives? How? Northern California's River Run Free, a water diversion battle. This could be the most dramatic shakeup in Northern California water history, and it's already underway. Just this past week, the century-old Potter Valley project took a giant step toward removal. On July 25th, PG&E filed its official plan with federal regulators to dismantle the two-dam system that for over 100 years has funneled water from the Eel River into the Russian River. At almost the same time, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors became one of the 7 final signatories on a landmark water diversion agreement, clearing the path for a new infrastructure proposal called the new Eel-Russian Facility, or NERF. Together, these moves mark a historic turning point. An iconic interbasin water transfer is being retired, and the future of how two great rivers share water is anyone's guess. A brief history for more than a century. The Potter Valley Project has redirected Eel River flows through a mile-long tunnel cut through the mountains of Mendocino County. Beginning with the completion of Scott Dam in 1922, creating Lake Pillsbury as a storage reservoir, this system has supplied farms, towns, and firefighting efforts from Potter Valley down to Marin County. Why the change? PG&E now calls the dams aged, seismically risky, and financially unfeasible. Their decommissioning plan outlines a complete removal of Scott and Cape Horn dams, shutdown of the hydroelectric plant, and the draining of Lake Pillsbury. Predictably, this vision has ignited heated debate on both sides of the divide. Enter NERF. NERF would only divert water during winter's heaviest and early spring flows. A stark departure from the steady summer deliveries that Russian River communities depend on for agriculture, tourism, and backyard pools. Eel River advocates hail this as a win for salmon and the river's natural rhythms. But many in the Russian River basin are worried they'll run dry at exactly the moment they need it most. But here's where it gets controversial. Is seasonal diversion truly the best compromise, or just a concession that understates the Russian River's summer water crisis? Voices for the Eel River. At a recent Humboldt County Supervisors meeting in Eureka, Eel River restoration champions celebrated the new agreement. Brian Johnson of Trout Unlimited praised the deal as decisively in favor of the Eel River, pointing out strict scientific safeguards that could further reduce diversions if salmon populations don't recover as promised. Charlie Schneider from California Trout called NERF a milestone for fish passage, ensuring salmon and steelhead can swim freely once the dams disappear. Fish need healthy habitat, abundant food, and clear corridors, he explained. Alicia Hammond of Friends of the Eel River described the moment as almost personal. Our organization was founded to push for this very outcome, she said. Though not a signatory herself, she applauded the turnabout. Former dam removal opponents are now backing both an ecological diversion and the dam's removal. But she warned that some Russian River stakeholders have begun to second-guess the deal, urging everyone to stick to the promise of dam removal if you signed on. The costs of taking down dams. PG&E's own filing with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission doesn't pull punches about the fallout for the Russian River watershed. It warns of unavoidable adverse effects once diversions end. Lower summer flows could leave farmers, ranchers, and rural communities scrambling. Wildlife will feel the impact too. Without Lake Pillsbury, ospreys and bald eagles lose a favored fishing spot. Tule elk could become stranded in shifting sediments. And northern spotted owls might abandon nesting grounds near the former reservoir. PG&E admits the local landscape will transform from a lacustrine to a riverine environment. In other words, the placid lake will give way to a free-flowing river, altering recreation options, community lifestyles, and even housing patterns around Scott Dam. Economic concerns. Lake County Treasurer Patrick Sullivan warns of steep financial losses, estimating that property tax revenue alone could dip by over $1 million per year. That's far from negligible for our communities, he wrote in a statement. A community divided. In public comments, Eureka resident Kent Sawatsky issued a stark warning. The negative karma incurred by manipulating Mother Nature may come back to haunt the Russian River basin. He reminded everyone that attempts to dominate natural systems often end in wildfires, floods, or worse. Mother Nature has the final say. So what happens next? Will NERF prove to be a balanced trade-off? Or are we risking summer water security on a promise of ecological restoration? Your turn. What side are you on? Should we prioritise restoring wild salmon runs even if it leaves farmers and small towns with less water in the summer? Or does human need,